Today we're going to be taking a look at a case for your iPhone which turns your phone into a Game Boy. This is the GameBaby by a company called BitmoLab, and it's a very simple yet clever product which gives you physical buttons to play your Game Boy games. Now this works with the app Delta, which is an emulation app for your iPhone, and it allows you to play lots of different devices, but obviously this is really a Game Boy focused product, but it does work on Game Boy Advance as well. This here is your L and R buttons, and we'll get into how well they work in just a minute, but let me just show you how this works. So there's two halves, as you can see, and the idea is that you slide off this piece and then you can return it to the back, protecting your phone as a case, as you can see. Now obviously there's a couple of little parts to this which is quite fiddly. For example, it's a very snug fit, so it's sometimes a little bit tricky to get off, and you have to be quite careful where you're holding it, otherwise you end up taking a million screenshots. It's also, if your hands are a little bit sweaty, quite hard to grip onto, and you really do, and this is my biggest pet peeve, and I'm going to get into this now because it really is a big pet peeve, because this is a new phone. It feels like you're slightly damaging your phone. I can't actually see that you are, and I'll get some close-up shots. It does look like you are, but then when you rub off that sort of scratch, it's definitely the inside of the actual phone case that's scratching onto the phone, not the other way around, which is relieving. But this is obviously just going to be the nature of the product. You are going to be, sliding things on and off all the time, which is just, I don't know how else they could have designed this other than maybe having some sort of flap thing that comes all the way around, which would be equally as janky, but it does feel a little bit like it's damaging the phone, and it's a little bit fiddly. It is a little bit fiddly, I mean, it's not too bad, and I don't know how often you would be doing this, but if you're an avid Game Boy player and you're sliding it on and off all the time, it's a little bit tricky. Not to mention, these little tab things are only made out of a thin plastic, so they don't feel like they're going to be the longest lasting little mechanism to keep it actually slid on. But I am just, finding some pet peeves that I've experienced over the last couple of days. Now, other than that, it's a very cool case as well, which makes your phone look interesting. It obviously works very well as a case. This video has actually been sponsored by BitmoLab, but all of my opinions are mine, and I'm not going to be sending this to BitmoLab prior to uploading it, and there's no criteria or checklist of things I have to mention. This is my own review. They've just sponsored this video as well. Now this phone case is $40, and the grey one is only for the iPhone 17, the iPhone 17 Pro, and the iPhone 17 Pro Max. The yellow one, you have lots of other options like the 15 Pro Max, and that case is ever so slightly different. Obviously, it's for a different phone case, but they haven't yet made the grey one for the previous generation. So you have got the case options on the yellow for the 15 Pro Max and the 16 Pro Max, as well as the 17 options as well. Who is this for? Because if I'm going to be playing Game Boy games, I'm going to be using either a modded Game Boy. This is a modded Game Boy Advance, which is extremely cool. And the reason I love it so much is because it has the authentic button feel and a really nice modern screen. This is obviously a very modded Game Boy with USB-C charging on the bottom as well. But despite all of the modifications, it still feels like an authentic way to play Game Boy games. But if I'm looking for something that isn't so authentic yet has some of the same characteristics that I like the clicky buttons, then this is the Analog Pocket, which is probably my next preferred way of playing Game Boy games. Massive, big screen, very nice to hold. Again, USB-C charging, great speakers, headphone jack, everything you could possibly want on a modern Game Boy is right here. But not everybody wants to fork out hundreds and hundreds of pounds for a dedicated way to play Game Boy games. Some people are just going to want to play some of their classics, and if that's the case, then Delta is an app that exists, and this isn't an ad, of course, for Delta. This app has existed for quite some time, but this is just an emulation application for your phone, which allows you to play some Game Boy games, and it's quite nice. There's some tactic sort of feedback with a vibration when you touch the buttons, but you don't have that same experience. And one of the most important parts of that experience is the actual physical buttons. That is really a key part for me when I actually play my games, is feeling that. And touching the screen, it works, but it doesn't quite have the same authentic feel. And that's understandable. You know, you can't really fault it because there's no way that this application is just gonna suddenly form physical buttons for you. And the vibration is pretty good at making you at least feel like you've got a registered button press. But that is where BitmoLab came in with the GameBaby. And it's a really brilliant product. Here is another color that they have, a yellow and a sort of a pale beige, is that? I don't know what that is. Is that a beige? I don't know. Phone armor with retro gaming superpowers. This, by the way, is a Chinese company that make this, which is obviously not a surprise, but it's a very nice little product. And clearly they care a lot about making this feel like a, you know, an authentic way of playing Game Boy games. As authentic as it can be on an iPhone. So let's take this one out here as well. There's some manuals and some cards. This card is actually quite useful because you do need to download a skin for Delta. And let me show you what that means. So when you're in Delta, you have to go up into the little settings here, and then you have controller skins, and you can see there's a bunch of different options, but we need to click on the Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance. And then when you click on this, a little plus button up here will pop up, and then you can click on that, and then you can just search for skin, and then you're gonna have the skins which you've downloaded off of the GameBaby website. And then once you've done that, you can just scroll down and there is your skin. Now, if you don't have this, let me just show you what happens. You'll notice that the buttons aren't going to align. So if I take this off very quickly and just show you. So the menu button is down here on the right hand side, whereas on the original skin it's on the left, so that obviously wouldn't work. And the other thing as well is that the menu only opens this far down. So what their skin very cleverly does is it pops the menu above the button so that you can access those things, and also you have a few little shortcut options here like save, load and forward, which is quite useful. So I find that the easiest way and the least damaging feeling way to do this is to just get your nail underneath the case and press in on the phone button, the lock button as you press it down, and then it doesn't feel like you're scraping and scratching anything. So there is the yellow, and then you have the lower half here. Now this one looks as though these buttons are made out of metal, which is quite nice, and I don't think that's the same on the grey one. These are more plastic. I much prefer the look of the grey one. It's quite nice as well that they can possibly sell these individual parts so that you can swap things out. But there we go, that's the yellow one. That does look very nice, actually. I really do like the look of that. But I do prefer the original grey one because that one is just much more authentically Game Boy. So of course we need to actually answer the question, how well does this actually work? So this isn't going to be a review of the Delta emulation app, and I'm not endorsing downloading ROMs illegally. I just would like to make those things clear in the hopes that I don't get sued. I want to just talk about how well the actual case works, because that is what I'm making this video about. So let me show you. Now, one of the complaints that I saw about this phone case was when it comes to things like a double press. So obviously on Mario, you want to be running and jumping. Now, I don't know what video I was watching or if it was a previous version of this phone case, but I seem to have maybe 9 out of 10 accuracy of running and jumping. So pressing, you're pressing 3 buttons at once. Now, I don't know on the iPhone how many inputs you can have on the screen at any one moment, but this really does seem to work quite well for me. I haven't had any issues. As I said, it's probably 9 out of 10 times that the triple press works. So that's moving your character plus running and jumping. It seems to work fairly well for me. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Now, in terms of how the buttons actually feel, well, I would say this is just the perfect amount of travel. It's not too spongy, and yet it's not too firm. It feels very similar to the Analog Pocket, to be honest with you. It feels, I mean, this is obviously not original. This feels quite similar as well. It does actually just really feel like a button. And the reason why that is because it uses the exact same method. It's a small little silicone pad that is pressed down and then touches onto the screen. And it's somewhat obviously conductive or something, which actually makes it work. So it's basically the exact same thing inside these old devices, which is a rubber membrane onto a, well, in this case, it's the phone screen, but originally it would have just been the circuit board. But that's still a flat thing with a rubber piece on top of that, and that's exactly what this is. So that's why it feels so authentic. That might get you wondering, does it work with a screen protector? Well, I've got a tempered glass screen protector on here, and there's absolutely no issues whatsoever. So yeah, in terms of its actual functionality, it does work very well. Obviously, it's never gonna work as good as an original Game Boy, but that's to be expected. But in terms of adding buttons to your iPhone, it's doing that, and it's doing that well. The case is made from a very nice, durable feeling plastic. It's not like a paint. All of this pigmentation is actually in the plastic itself. The buttons up here are all made out of metal. My one complaint with those is that they do actually rattle a little bit, which I'm not a big fan of. But yeah, seriously, this works so well. There must be a way actually to haptic feedback. There we go. One thing I've actually really been wanting to do is turn off the haptic feedback for the buttons, because we've already got now buttons. We don't need haptic feedback as well. That doesn't feel very authentic. You wouldn't be getting a vibration from pressing buttons on an original Game Boy. So there we go. That has made a huge improvement there. So don't forget to turn off the haptic feedback. But look at that. I mean, if you've already got an iPhone and you want to play some Game Boy games, this is brilliant. No modification required, no installing a screen and soldering. This just works really well. And you've got a great speaker, you've got a rechargeable battery, obviously, you've got a modern screen. This is all the stuff that modders like myself have been adding to an original Game Boy. So look at that. That is all working very, very well. And I don't have any complaints about the controls. Now, this is going to be one of those things that I'm sure is personal preference. Lots of people are probably going to be satisfied with how the GameBaby feels. Others are going to have a real issue, and it's not going to tickle their fancy. But you know, I suppose with this sort of thing, it is subjective. And if it's the average person looking to just have a cool retro phone case, which also gives them the ability to use physical buttons in their emulation, then this obviously ticks those boxes. Now, they've also made this usable for Game Boy Advance by giving you these L&R shoulder buttons, which is pretty much how it was on Delta. So this is not like their workaround per se by having these buttons up here. That was how you played Game Boy Advance games on here. I know it's not ideal. You know, you would expect them to be somewhere on the back, maybe round here or something. But again, how could they have gone around that? And this still does work. Let me show you with a little bit of Mario Kart. What actually ends up happening is you forget that this is your phone, because you're looking at the screen and you're pressing buttons. And then you're like, Game Boy, this is familiar. So yeah, again, this is working very well. Clearly no issues whatsoever. Let me turn the volume up a little bit. Oh, that's too loud, goodness me. Okay, so we've now picked up a little mushroom. Let's go to use that, and that works absolutely fine. And if we want to do some little skids, let's just quickly... Oh, we've got 3 shells. Here we go. First place. The skid works perfectly well. I'm never very good at it on the Game Boy Advance version of this game. Now, this is going to be a bit tricky, but we're going to go for a reverse shell fling, which worked. Victory on the GameBaby. What more could you ask for? So, my final thoughts then on the GameBaby. Honestly, it's a pretty damn cool thing. I think it's pretty great. I love the fact that when you're not using it, it is just a really nice retro case. I am used to using quite a rugged case by Otterbox, but this works very well. The lip for the cameras protrudes further than the lenses, which is going to give your cameras security. The lip around the bezel of the phone, the front of the phone, protrudes so that it's going to give your phone screen protection. Obviously, there's no rubber in this phone case, so if you're dropping it from a far height, I'm not sure it's going to protect it that much, but at the same time, they're not making a rugged phone case. They're making a decent phone case which gives your iPhone buttons. I'm not a huge fan of the sliding on and off, but then again, how could they get around that? And so if they were to just give up and not do it like this, we wouldn't have anything at all. So, you know, fair play, it works. It's not the best, but I don't think there's a better option. These little clips being a little bit delicate, again, what else are they gonna do? Charge you an extra £5, £10 for having some sort of metal button that you press on either side? Like what? I don't know how else they'd be able to do this. They need to have some sort of clasp, otherwise it is just gonna slide off as you're playing. The buttons all feel quite good. The access to the smart button thing works as well as any other phone case does as well. I really am quite impressed with it, to be honest with you. It really is just quite a nice phone case. It works very well. I'm very impressed. Thank you very much to GameBaby for sponsoring this video and sending me this product. And yeah, an interesting little phone case by BitmoLab. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one. Goodbye.